step forward.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to another episode of the Then and Now podcast, everybody. We have the usual co-host, me, C. Diesel, Lelouch V, and Professor E. King of the Comics. But today, people, we have a very special guest with us. The infamous Jason Richardson, a.k.a. J. Rich, a.k.a. Spider-Man, a.k.a. a man of many names. Brother, how you doing?
Hey, what's going on? Chilling.
Man, we are ecstatic to have you on. Thank you for giving us so much of your time. I'm trying to say that now to our interviewees, just to show just time is the invaluable resource you don't get back. So we appreciate you giving some of it to us.
No, I appreciate it. I appreciate just being here. You know, y'all thinking about even having me on there. Look, that's good to me. Like I mess with that. Like, I love y'all.
Appreciate that, man. To go ahead and get started, for people that may not be aware of who you are, could you kind of tell the fans who you are and a little bit of what you do?
I'm Jay Rich, also known as Spider-Man. I'm a comic book artist and writer, voice actor, game developer, director.
Damn.
What else? I mean, pretty much everything in industry. I have worked in that field. I own J1 Con, which is the longest running Black-owned anime convention ever. I don't want to ever say the world because it seems really Dio of me, but I just I sometimes just say in the country.
No, I mean, go ahead and put the Dio energy out there. I'm a JoJo fan. I respect it. It's okay.
Yeah, I don't imagine that there's any more cons Black run in Japan. So yeah,
fair.
So talk your
right.
shit.
Yeah, because I mean, J1 Con, even though unfortunately I haven't been able to go myself, I mean, it's been pretty infamous. Like I knew about J1 Con before I knew about any of Black nerd cons in general. Like I didn't even know that was a concept before J1 Con. So can you tell us a little bit about how you started that initially? Because I'm definitely curious to know.
Yeah, well, I started doing these events around the city, like video game events, like, tournaments and stuff like that. But, there's other, people in the Philly scene, especially like Big E from Big E Gaming. He holds it down as like the godfather of the Philly, like, fighting game scene. But I wanted to add twists to it because I love competitive, fighting games and all that stuff. But I also love cosplay, even before it was like popping like it is now. And I was always into anime and manga. And so I wanted to just kind of bring some of those influences because I knew these nerds existed, especially in the Philly area, but there was nowhere for them to go. So I would make these like little pop-up events. So it'd be like, we had Mayhem Madness, which was our video game tournament. You'd win money, prizes, all that. But I would add a cosplay contest in there as well. We'd have a few vendors. And then because I've been in the like music industry, I wanted to incorporate that. And so I would find like local indie bands or hip hop artists and this, that, the other thing, and bring them in and give them a stage, so that they could put that on their resume, like I performed at this event or that event, so that I could build their credibility. And it added an extra flavor to a lot of my stuff. So then I also created a music festival. And I wanted the music festival to be a multi-genre music festival, because I've been in various genres. I'm also a singer. I used to be a musician, like play piano. I played the harmonica back in the day. Like I was like in the like guitar. I have a guitar sitting over there. I haven't touched that in ages. But so I made like a music festival that was hip hop, rock, industrial, all that stuff, plus a cosplay contest and gaming tournaments. Then I teamed up. I met this woman, Marion Beal. Like she was having like this little anime event in the FYE, and it had like 10, 15 people, and I was like, yo, you join up with my company, I could turn this into like something. because I know business, I know marketing and all that stuff, and that's usually a hard thing to balance when you're a creative. And, but somehow, I guess which is now diagnosed as like severe like ADHD, I was able to like make that work, and we made like the J1 anime event. And then on top of that, even before all that, I had J1 Studios, which helped with the credibility of some of the stuff I was doing, because J1 Studios was a news source, because we were like the first Black nerd news source, because we would do like video game reviews, comic book reviews, anime reviews, like all this stuff on the site. But because I knew no one knew who I was when I started my comic company, J1 Studios, I used the news as a way to bake them in. And then they'd be like, "Oh, there's comics?" And they'd look and they'd be like, "Wait, the mascot of the company is a Black anime girl? Okay, let's see what this is all about." And then next you know, they're reading our comics and all that stuff. We had video game remix albums that people could download. Yeah, so there was always just content. And we got a lot of recognition. I started one of I think probably the first known Black nerd like gaming podcast back in 2008, 2009. Wow. Like, and this is when podcasts were like just starting.
Right.
Like you couldn't get ads on. No one cared about like ad space on podcasts because podcasts weren't popping like that. And I started a podcast known as The Reset Button. And we were like the Black version of G4. So like even the site was kind of like that. I wanted to be like G4 and Kotaku and all that stuff, but more for our people, you know what I'm saying? Like, and we would be invited to conventions and other like spaces because we would do on location, just like they would do with G4. They were like, "Hey, everybody, we're here at New York Comic Con, and this is blah blah," and they would interview random people and like do that kind of stuff. And then the comics took off, and everything just kind of started taking off and doing its own thing. Like the comics got super popular, more than I expected, where we started getting fan art from around the world.
That's great.
And then I was like, you know what? I should probably just do I had the Street Fighter tribute book that had came out, and I was like, because I'm huge on Capcom and fighting games in general. Obviously, a KOF 15 poster exclusive. Like, you know.
So when you say you worked on the comic, were you the writer of it, the artist on it? Do you have a team?
I wrote and drew multiple comics. Yeah.
But what don't you do? Jesus Christ! Writer, musician.
So the comics themselves, are you the one man banding them? I know you have obviously a team of people that you work with in general on different things, but you do everything yourself.
Mascot, Super Bounty J1. I didn't really have a name for her because she was just a mascot of the site, and everybody liked to see a Black girl, like, you know, on the screen. So they made me, like, the fans like kind of forced me into making a comic, so I just made something up. But I also had my other book. It was actually 3 issues. Actually, 3 issues are actually back here behind me. But this is Angel Savior. One of my other books, and I write and draw both of them. One's sci-fi, one's like biblical DBZ, and then this one here. I'm the writer and artist for the Mega Ran manga, and there's Mega Ran down there.
So I gotta ask, because this just to kind of take a second, because you've thrown like a lot of different talents and things at us that like you do, from musician to artist to writer to now you're organizing these conventions.
Graphic designer.
Where did this all start? Like this level of creativity start? Like, were you just enamored with this kind of stuff initially, or when did you like start to kind of get interested in this stuff?
Okay, so I'm old.
Not older than me. I promise you that much. I have you about a few years.
Do you?
I'm 42.
Oh, son.
Son. Call me son. Call me son.
Damn. Oh, damn.
Yeah, I'll be in August. I'll be 45. So
okay, all right. He has 2 years to call me son. I don't know if 2-year-olds that are having kids, but all right.
2 years of intense nerddom. Because when I was like, I guess between 10 and 12, I had an Apple IIe. That was back in the day. It was a computer, an old computer, had a black screen. Everything was green, like the Matrix. I learned how to program in BASIC, and I started making my own games. And the NES was just popping around that time. Like NES was taking off, and then Nintendo Power came out, and I was like, I want to be like Nintendo. But I didn't want to do like the surface. I want to be like Nintendo. How when people look at someone who's like made it and they're like, I want to be like that. So they think they can do what they're doing at that point. Right. I believe in learning how to get to that point. So I started learning on like the business end of like the gaming scene and like as a company, not as like a player. And then I figured out how to make different games, sports games, adventure games, all this stuff. And then I would package them up just like the NES. So I'd have them in a little sleeve because back then we had these big black floppy disks. They were actually floppy. You can shake them. Don't put them near magnets. And I would package them in cardboard just like the NES because a lot of people don't know. When the NES came out, all their games, they weren't in plastic containers and all that stuff. They were in cardboard boxes and they were just designed well. So I started making my own cardboard boxes. I'd make like a little manual that was like the little landscape like format that they had for the original NES. Genesis had the long, like the portrait one, but it was all black and white, and I thought that was trash. But Nintendo used to do them in color, and I was like, that's dope. And they actually put art in it. So I was doing all that stuff, and I would sell it to my friends in the neighborhood and like to teachers, to just everybody. And then I made a magazine that had tips and tricks on how to beat my games. Because I was making games almost every 2 days I was making a new game. Jesus. And I purposely knew ahead of time. I had this business plan ahead of time to make the magazine. So I would already code in secret passcodes and stuff like that into the game. So then I could sell the magazine and create subscription process with different people. And then also had comics inside based on some of the games I created. So I was trying to be Nintendo Power. So I actually took on the business model of Nintendo Power.
And it's 10 years old. He said 12 years old, yeah.
Yeah.
Jesus. At 10, I was still watching cartoons and eating cereal. I
was still doing that, but I also was like, I was really into wanting to get into this industry. And back then, there was no internet. There was no access, like easy access to these things. So I wanted to get into animation. So I started making comics. But since I couldn't animate, and we didn't have money. Like I'm first generation. My family's from Jamaica. Like a single mom, like she's doing the best she can. So I was taking my comics, papers, draw it out, and all that stuff. But then I took 2 recorders, and I started making the audio for the comics. So it was like a read-along comic. So I would do the different voices, and then I would do, I don't know if you know what Foley is, but Foley is when you make sound effects for movies and games and all that stuff. So I learned how to make Foley with stuff around the house. Like if you take a butter knife and a fork and slide it across each other, that's where you get that shing from when swords are slashing and stuff like that. And then I would take stuff like carrots and celery and like crush them, and that's how you make bones breaking. And then like I was just doing all this stuff like to make all these sound effects, and I would do all the different voices, so, and then I put like a little beep to tell you to turn the page, and then I would use music and like kind of play it in the background while I'm doing the recordings. like I would do the recordings first as the different characters, and I took 2 tape recorders and I would like record the dialogue back and forth so I could kind of mix it together, like making a mixtape. And then once I got that full audio, I would play it, and then I would play music in the background, usually like classical music because it was very dramatic and stuff like that. And that's how I made the soundtrack merge with the audio. So then you would get this whole read-along book with all my books, like, and with explosions and sound, all that stuff. I was really into it. Like, I was,
bro.
Hence now doing voice acting.
How old were you at that point doing all that stuff?
Yeah, I was living in West Philly at the time, so we left West Philly I was 12. So pretty much from like probably like 8 to 12, because there was like a number of years, like because she could only like she got a gift. They gifted us from her job like the Apple IIe, so I could have a computer at home. And from there, like I found an old book on how to make these little cheesy games and like dice games and all this stuff for BASIC. And I learned that looking at the code that there was like randomizers and all that stuff. So that's how I created like the computer, you know, like for my like fighting games. I had like little like fighting game type stuff. And yeah, I was really into that stuff. And graphics, because graphics were back then. If I didn't use blocks, I used the ASCII code, where if you can make shapes out of like the parentheses, an underscore, a slash, forward slash, and periods, colons, and all that stuff. And I would make those images. That's how I made my characters with the muscles. So it'd be like for a shoulder, it'd be like a parentheses, underscore, parentheses. So it created that space. But the line above it would also be underscore. So instead of it, the minus symbol being high, it would sit low and make that whole shoulder. So I use graph paper to kind of create my graphics of my fighting game characters, and I'd let each image run at like I guess it was like a millisecond per frame or something like that, so that it would like flicker, so it would look like it was animating, and then you had to like quickly press like S, you know, enter for like a special, SP for like super punch, you know, like stuff like that. And then I found, then years later, that's what they used for like memes and stuff like that, like the ASCII code to make the images of like the face palm and like the card face palm and all that stuff. I was like, man,
doing
that first. Oh, shut
that is you were probably the most active 10-year-old I've ever heard of my entire life.
Yeah, more active than people in their 30s and 40s now.
Yeah, so, bro. It's like Jesus.
And then once we moved, you know, the computer, you know, it died. It was, you know, it was old or whatever. And then I got a Mac, like the first Macintosh. Like it was like, it looked big, like, but now that I look back at them, they're like tiny little like mini TVs,
like little squares, basically.
Yeah, but I didn't know how to code on there, so I had to find new ways to do it, and I stopped doing computers, and then I started moving to making board games and card games. So I used to take every video game that I played that I really liked, I figured out a way to make that into a playable like board game. Like I made board games that were platformers like Mario, because like Mario 2 and 3 were popping at the time. So I made my own version, and it was like a black kid who had suspenders on. He had a yellow shirt, but instead of a Tanuki suit, I made him get a lion head. And now they got Cat Mario. I was like, oh, look at that. But I just wanted to go with, because I'm a Leo and Jamaican, black. So the whole lion thing kind of just fit right into place. So
what you're telling me is that Nintendo owes you some money.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish. I wish I could point that out, but like, I mean, you know, it is what it is. That just means whatever I was doing back then, as a kid was
Going
the
track.
right track.
Yeah.
You know, if these major studios, these multi-billion-dollar companies are doing what I've done, if I had those resources, I could have been, you know,
Right.
the next Miyamoto, like, you know. So, and then with that, eventually I started J1 Studios, and before that I was a graphic designer, and I also like worked on, for a solutions company, I actually worked on stuff for the first 5 iPhones. Like, I got to do a lot of dope stuff. Like I held the prototypes. I remember when I held the first iPhone before it even came out. I was like, I showed it to my now wife. I was like, I came over to her parents' house. I was like, look at this. There's one button. This is gonna change the industry. This is gonna change everything.
Was that illegal? Were you allowed to take the prototype away and show that off to other people? Did you sign some? Did they all have some serious NDAs?
No, not like, it wasn't like I was online like, yo, look at this new thing I got. Like, it was literally my girlfriend, you know, like. But then once she got we got married and all that stuff, she was used to seeing all that stuff, because like, and there's like a secret like thing with like Apple, like there's some like account you have to say a certain thing, and like they would like, oh, here, and it'd just be the unmarked box, and it'd be a prototype and all that stuff,
like the Illuminati of Apple, so to speak.
Yeah, I remember.
What's the difference?
People that lost the iPhone 4. Like, because I was working on this project and she was getting on my case. She was like, you take your phone everywhere, even to the bathroom, blah, blah, blah. Now everybody does it, even if she does it. Like, I'm like, all right. And like, wish I could make you go back in time and apologize. Like, but like, she made me like, she made me feel bad. So I was like, yeah, I do take it with me. But I'm like, this is like secret, like, top secret stuff right here. We're testing out how you can send data, emergency files. I worked on Silverlight as a beta to test. The Silverlight is like Flash, but you can put data behind it. That was the thing. So it was going to be used for like hospitals, so doctors can actually check EKGs from like, and their patient stats from their homes, like from their phones. And Silverlight was used a lot of the years through NBC for streaming the Olympics. They use Silverlight. But like, she got on me. I was like, all right. So I went to the bar one time, and it's a local bar. Everybody knows me, all that stuff. I put my phone down, and I walked the bar was like 20 feet. I walked about 20 feet. I was like, oh, let me get my phone. Turn back, gone.
Of course.
Damn.
And the phone ain't even come out yet. I was like, oh, Lord, I'm in so much trouble. So one of the things we noticed, or at least I noticed, was whenever you sent any emails or files and all that stuff through the phone to test it, it always sent at the bottom, it said sent by iPhone. So I was slick, because I always worked from home doing this stuff. So every time they would call me, I kept the same phone number. I had a burner, and they'd be like, hey, we just sent you a file, blah, blah, blah. Can you check it real quick? I would, if I wasn't home, I'd dart home real quick, get on my computer, check that email, and then reply back through the email or send whatever files. But at the bottom, I will always type sent from iPhone. So
that's awesome. Well, out of all your projects now, Jay, like what are you most excited about that you're working on now?
I'm literally working on like 8 different projects right now.
Mm-hmm. Out of those eight, what's the one that your crown jewel right now?
I mean, I will always love VT Heroes. That like brought me back to like the game development world. I love fighting games, so I made an actual fighting game, but in card form.
Could you kind of explain to us like how you're able to do that, or what the game is?
Yeah, you mentioned it before, but I never understood like how exactly it worked. Exactly.
Okay, so VT
yeah, it's actually based on an old concept I made called VTF, which is VT Fighters. it's a one-on-one fighting card game where your characters had different moves from punches, kicks, grabs, throws, evades, specials, and supers. And based on the different type of player, that character could be stronger, or when I say faster, their abilities would be they could actually link cards together to do combos. So I was very into like the structure of fighting games. I was also game developer, so I was into the numbers and all that stuff. But this one, you build a hero, an element, and a totem to create a fighter, and that gives you the different level abilities you can do. So examples like VT Blue, because they're all like I'm into Rangers this time around. So
you can tell, yeah.
I love Tokusatsu. So VT Blue has like a certain attack level, it's like 2. So he can only use cards that go up to level 2. He can't use any higher attack level cards. Then based on your element, like lightning, that gave you like a level, say level 2. So same thing, but it was defense cards. Your element is your defense cards, and then your totem is your power cards. So attacks are like hand-to-hand moves. Defensive is obviously defensive moves and elements. Power is your totem, like your spirit animal, and weapons. And then you had a baseline of intelligence, which was added up between the 3 cards. Those were like your boosters so you could level up and all that stuff. Think of it like it's funny because it's kind of like what you're seeing in the newer fighting games, where you can, with the experience points, like with World Tour, with Street Fighter 6, you can build yourself up, where your character can actually learn Ryu's Hadouken, Zangief's Pile Driver, and like Chun-Li's Lightning Kick, like in Street Fighter, in the new Street Fighter
6.
Yeah. So that's pretty much what I did with VT Heroes. That's like how you build your characters, and I did that back in 2019. Oh,
that's again, people owe you money.
Yeah, right.
And of course, the quick question everyone's going to be thinking about is, what does the VT stand for? Is it like very tough or victorious tournament?
Virtual tournament. Story-wise, those Rangers and all that stuff, they're actually digital constructs. So the person logs in kind of Matrix style, Matrix, Ready Player One, Tron, they merge into this digital world and they're this player, and then they fight and can do the moves and all that stuff. Right on. It's super easy to learn. If you can understand just the understanding, I say physics or logic of fighting games and rock, paper, scissors and simple math, you're going to figure out the game.
Of course.
I make all my games parent proof. That way parents can actually learn the game quickly and play it with their children, thus creating something they can bond with.
Right on. That's a good idea.
And there's all types of representation. Like I think I might be the first to make like different body types for my Rangers. Because like we got a thick girl. She's like the second physically strongest one in the game in Series 1. We got a stout boy with belly and all that stuff. We have like the thin athletic typical builds. That's my Ryu and Kens of this game. They're the blue and the yellow. But I went body positive on a more less, I hate to say it like this, but less woke way, because whenever people do body positivity, it's always just plus size. So I made like a girl who has a 0 frame build, where she doesn't have a lot of hips, don't have a lot of like curves all around. She's just a thin girl.
Right.
And by doing that, I just wanted to make it fair and show variety. I didn't expect to get like actual love letters from women who suffered from eating disorders. We've never been represented in any of this stuff whenever they say body positivity or anything like that. And you actually make us like cool looking and strong. I was like,
right on.
Yeah, I want everybody to get a fair shot.
And we'll have the link to that for anybody that wants to purchase the game and wants to check it out. I'll put the link to the description of this video, actually, if I can get it.
Yeah, and it's really dope because like when I did the Kickstarter for it, that was my first Kickstarter ever, and I wanted to launch it on my birthday because I always, it's kind of for me, like I started my company on my birthday, and I didn't know anything about Kickstarter. I accidentally launched it 2 days ahead of time. I was like, oh, that sucks. Because I didn't know how Kickstarter worked, and I thought the launch button would let me skip the time, and I just sit back and let it launch. No, the launch button actually launches it immediately. And it got funded within half an hour. And I was like, wait a minute, what? So I accidentally launched it, then immediately had to go on my IG Live and my Facebook Live and just start thanking people. And then I had a simple goal of like $500 because I just wanted to make a couple copies to send to like YouTubers who could talk about it. The first phase of the Kickstarter was over $10,000, and then I made an additional $4,000 because they extended the time for me, and then next you know I won about 20 plus awards, and I even got to like work and do stuff with like the Power Rangers, like the actual Power Rangers, like the Silver and the Red Ranger from In Space. It was Andros and Zane, Justin and Chris. We're now like homies. Like I could like literally call them up, like, yo, what you doing? Like, like if they see me on IG Live, they'll text me of like, yo, I want to jump on your live. And then just like we just start BSing. They presented my game at J1Con. Like I wanted to do like an E3 style presentation for it, and like before we did the Kickstarter, and they totally did, and I was like, what?
That's nuts.
That's awesome. That's congrats, brother. That's great.
And now like about 6 or 7 different Rangers from the various series all have copies or have done promos for VT Heroes. Even Rory Travis, who is the Red Ranger from Beast Morphers, like, another brother was like, yo, check out VT Heroes. Like he's standing right next to the sign, like the banner of VT Heroes. Like, yo, check out VT Heroes, and he's holding his helmet. No, I'm like,
so speaking on the Power Rangers thing, I know when our initial phone call, you told me about a story that I thought was really dope that I couldn't wait for you to kind of share with the fellas here regarding Stan Lee and his influence on getting the original Power Ranger series to the US and to the world in general.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm a big Spider-Man, and I'm a huge Spider-Man fan. Like my kids are named Jonathan Parker and Miles Jackson, and they have an Uncle Ben.
Of course.
Yeah, there's my boys right there. And someone made that the blanket for us. Like we have a lot of Spider-Man stuff from a lot of family and fans and stuff like that. They send us stuff all the time. And but Stan Lee wanted to bring Spider-Man to Japan, and he knew the audience wouldn't vibe with the type of story that is the Spider-Man we know in the West. So they came up with one that fit more the Japanese culture. And he was like a motorcyclist, stunt driver, and all this stuff. And this wizard gives him the power of the spider, and it's like an alien wizard and all this stuff. And it gave him a ship that turns into a mech. Like the ship was like known as the Marveler. And then he gets then it turns into this mech that's like the Leopardon or something. Like it's literally a leopard-headed Megazord type thing. And I was just like, that's weird. And he calls himself, the Spider-Man is known as the Emissary of Hell. Like that's literally he transformed. He had this big old oaky like band on his arm. That's where his suit was, and he's like Spider-Man, and then the suit would come up and like,
wow,
and jump on him, and he was like Spider-Man, Emissary of Hell. Like I was like, what? And he's fighting witches and all kinds of stuff, and
okay,
it was so successful that is what inspired Power Rangers. Because before then, there wasn't like bodysuit transformations with jumping into mechs and all that kind of stuff. So the success of that Japanese Spider-Man series is the reason why we have stuff like Power Rangers.
That's incredible. That's incredible. Yeah.
Because Marvel's had their hands in a lot of stuff with Japan. Because what people don't realize is that Stan Lee loved Japan and he loved anime, like hardcore. He has animes that have been out recently. Well, I'd say at this point, now it's a long time now, probably like 10 years, maybe. Look up Hero Man. Hero Man is literally about a boy and his robot. And the boy and his robot like fight, bad guys, all that stuff. And his friend and advisor was this old man who had a diner called Stanley.
Stanley, that's an anime character. It eventually got evolved into Big Hero 6. Yeah,
I was gonna ask.
Hold on, that was also a separate thing. No, Hero Man was made after Big Hero 6.
Oh, really? Okay.
Big Hero 6 was actually, everybody just knows Big Hero 6, the movie. It was a whole comic series.
It was a comic book before. Yeah, it was a Marvel comic. Yeah,
it was a comic series. And the designs were way different than what we got with the movie. But yeah, he's always done that kind of stuff. Give you an example, Transformers. In Japan, they were just a cool toy. This is a car. Blah, 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 blah. It now makes a robot. Do this Jeep now is a robot. All this stuff. So they were like, this would be really cool in America. This would make a lot of money. But this looks boring. Like, what can we add to this? And so they went to Marvel and they were like, yo, what can you do with this? And my man's, I forgot his guy's name. I believe it's Dan something. I forgot. But he was like, hear me out. We call them Transformers. They live on a planet called Cybertron. And there's a war. And they're like, what? And they're like, but how do we sell them as toys? All right, we make good guys and we make bad guys. The good guys are going to be called Autobots. The bad guys are going to be called Decepticons. But how are we going to tell the difference? Because most of them even were all the same color too. Like there was a run where they were all like all white or gray or like it was just But the way they did it was good guys are all vehicles that drive with 4 wheels. Yeah, that 4 wheels and drive. Those are the good guys. Anything else that flies or is not a vehicle with 4 wheels, those are the bad guys. That's why in G1, all the jets were Decepticons. Right. All the vehicles like the Jeeps, the cars, the trucks, those were the Autobots. It wasn't until like later in the series, like in season 2, where they started like making like characters good and bad and switching them out. Because Jetfire was a jet when he first, when he first came out. Though he was a Decepticon, and then they made a story where he became like an Autobot. Like so that's all that kind of weird stuff.
Shout out Stan Lee and Marvel, man. Marvel. We need to give them we need to give them any more praise for all the crazy stuff that they've been like developing over the years as far as comes to nerddom or comic in general.
I mean, I had what I call my Stan Lee moment. Like I was surprised one day through a message where a friend was like, yo, there's a fellow cosplayer. He's part of the Paladins of Cosplay. And they make dope suits and armors. You've probably seen them at most cons. If you've seen any Pacific Rim mechs walking around, that was them. If you saw like the Voltrons walking around, that was them. He sent me a picture, and in the background, there's a mannequin with like a VT Hero suit on. I was like, what is that? Wait, what? And then he showed me sent me another file. It was a video. And it was like the VT helmet, like spitting on this like thing. I'm like, and I thought it was a toy. Like, I was like, oh, he's making a little action. That's dope. Then I see his hands reach in, grab it, and put it on. I'm like, oh my God, he made me a helmet. He made the helmets. And then next thing you know, I'm on set watching my drawings and my creations fight in real life. And I was like, this is my Stan Lee moment. This is what Stan, like the excitement and joy and ready to cry was probably the feeling Stan Lee had like on the set of like Avengers, you know, or on the set of like the first Spider-Man movie. You know, that was like his favorite character, was like Spider-Man, like that was his boy. And just imagine that feeling, like you made it. You know what I mean? Where you're seeing your creations, like you hear action and they're doing this stuff and you're like, they're doing this stuff from a game, you know. Like,
that's the goal. We're trying to get there.
Yeah.
Another, again, this I'm trying to remember another story that you told me about from another person that we all love here. A lot of people love him from his influence and work on the Boondocks. The RZA from the Wu-Tang Clan. You said you had a good story about that, right?
Yeah, it is really dope. I worked in the Showboat Hotel. I was part of corporate and all that stuff. The hotel where J1 Khan now resides, because it was a Philly event, but then now it's Atlantic City. So I was head of marketing and all that stuff, and then I got I got a chance to meet the RZA, and you get in that kind of scene, you get to meet a lot of faces and all that stuff, and I was talking about my shows and all that stuff, and I was talking about, you know, anime and all the stuff I've worked on. Then we had he was like, I want to test your knowledge. Is you really an anime fan like that? I was like, bro, don't do it, but let's go. And he would describe an anime, and then I would tell him what it is, without using any names. You know what I mean? And he gave me like 10 different animes all over the place, and I was like, oh, that's Shoot Fighter Tekken, you know, you know, I knew all the things he was talking about. He was like, man, you know your stuff. So then we ended up having dinner, like me and one of my board of directors, Sherman, who runs Origin of Play. We ended up having dinner in his hotel room with we were just chilling, hanging out and all that stuff. And then, oh yeah, at one point he was like we were going on and on about anime. He was like, yo, check this out. And he just starts freestyling right there privately for us. Like puts on does a whole track he freestyle about anime.
Wow.
And I'm like, I wish I could go back in time and press record on a camera, but at the same time, I wanted to, but I didn't want to do that. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't want to be that bull. But I was like, yo, the RZA just
did an anime freestyle in your face,
for me, just did it right there on off the rip. Like, I was like, what? And then after we hung out a little bit more, we were leaving, and he did a promo video with me, straight up, just giving me my props on, you know, creating all this stuff for anime culture and you know, what now is Blerd culture. You know,
I mean, nuts. The RZA's always been on the forefront of building the Blerd culture, because he they were rapping about it before it even had a name. So I can't say I'm surprised, but getting to see that in person, that's amazing.
Yeah, and just through all my travels and doing so many different things, I've got to talk comic books with Booker T, had dinner with him, you know, I'm on stage with Sean Kingston, you know, I've been called up on stage on my birthday by comedian Steve Byrne, during his performance, and he made me part of his show. You know, I've got to meet you know, Capone Noriega, you know, I got to do all this dope stuff. And I was the videographer for Booker T at one point, because he knew I showed him the stuff I was doing, because I did stuff for MMA, because I was deep into martial arts. I used to be a martial artist for a lot of years. And people in the some of the people, not everybody, I wasn't like famous, but like there was people in like the MMA scene and like just that knew who I was, and I was like covering. I was the camera guy, like capturing the like those epic moments of like people getting knocked out or like recaps and highlights of the fights. So I was like right in the mix. So I got to do all that kind of cool stuff. I know there's one where like I got to be the trailer for the premiere of Black Panther. Like I wish I had recorded it, but I only took a picture because I was just so like out of it. You know what I mean? Like, right. and I got to promote J1 Con. And I had on like Black Panther Under Armour.
There you go. Yeah, there you go. Right
yeah. Like, bruh, like, you know, and I've won, you know, awards and stuff like that. I think over my history, we're at 30 something. I kind of lost count at 30 something. 32, 35, I don't know. Jesus. 30 something. And I'm in an encyclopedia. There's an encyclopedia of Black comics by Dr. Sheena Howard. It's an encyclopedia of influential Black people in the comic book industry, and they got my government on there, my history and all that stuff, and like samples of like pages from my mangas and stuff. Like,
that's awesome, man.
That's fantastic,
bro. You were accomplished. Well, yeah. Jason, we're getting ready to wrap up. Before we get ready to wrap up, could you go ahead and tell our people like different places they can find you, whether it be social media, websites, different things like that?
Yeah. You can find me. Just go to j1studios.com. We got all that kind of stuff. We official J1 Studios on Instagram and TikTok. I don't really know what I'm doing with TikTok. I don't know what I'm doing with that.
Hey, you followed us. That's how we got the interview set up. So I appreciate you for doing something with it.
Yeah, well, I like to follow and support everybody. Like, if I see people doing all this stuff, you know, like, it's dope. Like, you know, like, I was there, like Hilton walked me through and showed me what he wanted to do with BlerdCon when he was first making BlerdCon. And, like, seeing all this Black nerd stuff happen is amazing because I was alone, you know, like, trying to push this idea that we exist.
Right.
And it was hard because venues didn't even believe like Black nerds existed.
Right.
Because I would like go to hotels and all this stuff and like try to like talk to them. Like I would have actual meetings to talk about creating J1 Con there. And they're like, we don't want thugs here. And I'm like, what? Like no one said thugs. Yeah. But the only thing they had as a reference was Steve Urkel.
Yeah, exactly.
Like Blerd wasn't even a term yet.
Right.
You know, like when my first magazine or newspaper cover I ever got was like 2010, 2011. It said they came up with the term Black Geek Chic. You know, because like Blerd wasn't even a thing. So like it's crazy.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Well, again, Jason, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Yes. He was some dope stories, some stories that I didn't even know. I don't know if my co-host know in there as old as time. So yeah, again, so thank you for coming on. To the audience, again, thank you guys for your support. We hope you continued support. And we'll see you guys next time for another episode of the Then and
Wait. But before we sign out completely, did you want to do any promo for this upcoming J1 Con? Isn't there coming up in November?
Yeah, actually, yeah. Thank you for that one.
I forgot all about it.
Yeah, definitely come out November 3rd through the 5th, the J1 Con. It's in Atlantic City at the Showboat Hotel. And there's going to be a lot of dope stuff there. There's always like live music. There's games. There's going to be virtual reality, like actual sit-down, sit-in simulators and stuff like that. Where I'm going to just say it now. Signing the contract to actually create like a LAN esports tournament, like an official one, I think I have to talk with the company, but it looks like we may be having like Apex and a few other things where you can win some cash and all that kind of stuff. Awesome. And there's also workshops because I want everybody to learn. So we have voice acting classes by Greg Hauser, who teaches you how to do voice acting and how to get into the industry. I'm probably going to fly out my homie, Brian Newton. He's the director. He was the director of Rick and Morty, Teen Titans Go. He's a brother. And he also worked on Rugrats and a couple other things that I can't talk about right now. But, he's been at J1Con before, and I want to bring him back again so he can teach you on how to do animation directing and all that stuff. So we're going to have that, and Studio YGK will be there, and they'll probably be doing like a thing about how to do animation. So I'm always trying to create edutainment because there is money for everybody. I want to eliminate this idea that's in the black nerd scene of there's only one bag to win, which creates these crabs in a barrel. And if we stop doing that, we'd be as successful as Real Talk, because all these other white companies that are like literally helping each other out, that's how they blow up. And, if you have a media scene, if you're into the streaming and all that stuff, we usually have a thing that was created, we call it the Blackfinity Gauntlet. It is a summit and meet and greet between streamers, podcasters, and YouTubers of color, where you can just get to network with each other, learn tips and tricks on how to do certain stuff, and maybe help your following grow. So, and there's so much more. I just don't want to take up all the time.
I'm gonna give you about that summit because I may need to pull up at that low key.
Yeah, check out the games. And right now, in our store at J1 Studios by Rival Aim, if you're fans of Call of Duty and all that stuff, I turned Call of Duty into a party card game for 2 to 10 players with melee attacks, range attacks, common, rare, and legendary loot. You can take cover, you can run away, and if you're about to die, take everybody else out with you by dropping a nuke.
Damn.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for your time, man. Really appreciate it, brother.
Yeah, again, I appreciate this.
Everybody, thank you for your support. We hope for your continued support, and we'll see you guys next time. The next episode of the Then and Now podcast. Pine Negroes nasty.
I'll trademark this. Don't worry.